Please rise. Moment of silence. And the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Campion.
Here.
Mr. Dibber.
I am here.
Mrs. King.
Here.
Mr. Merrick.
Here.
Mr. Schuler.
Here.
Mr. Tompe.
Here.
Mayor O'Donnell.
Here. Pursuant to the requirements of the New Jersey's Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this meeting was included in the annual meeting notice filed in the office of the Borough Clerk, posted on the Borough website, and on the bulletin board in the municipal building. Published as legal notice in the Co-Star newspaper and mailed to those requesting notice and providing payment in accordance with borough policy. Next, can we get an approval of the agenda? I don't believe we have any changes to the agenda you have before you, so just as is.
Make that motion. I'll second it.
Roll call?
Mr. Campion.
Yes.
Mr. Dibber.
Yes.
Mrs. King.
Yes.
Mr. Merrick.
Yes.
Mr. Schuler.
Yes.
Mr. Tompe.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Next, we have approval of the minutes for the March 13th, 2017 meeting.
Make that motion. Second.
Mr. Campion.
Yes.
Mr. Dibber.
Oh, wait.
Oh, abstain, I'm sorry.
Abstain. He wasn't here for that one.
Mrs. King.
Yes.
Mr. Merrick.
Yes.
Mr. Schuler.
Abstain.
Mr. Tompe.
Yes.
Motion passes.
We do not have any presentations or scheduled public hearings, which brings us to our first public comment section. This public comment section is dedicated for agenda items only. Right after this, just so you know, we will be discussing the budget. So if you want to discuss that, you can discuss it either here or at the end. We will have another public comment section after we've talked about it. So again, this one is for agenda items only. If you have something you would like to say, please approach the chair, state your name and address. Seeing no hands, can I get a motion to close the
I'll
public
make
comment
that
section?
motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That brings us to our discussion item, the 2017 municipal budget. Who's going to be presented? Rich or, okay.
What do you mean? Tonight we are introducing the 2017 budget, and I am happy to report that it includes a 0% tax increase. There will be no new taxes from the borough of Spring Lake Heights in 2017. No new increase in taxes. I would compliment my former finance chair for leaving us a very nice surplus to work with, and a good capital program that we're actually continuing, and we'll get into that a little later. The main focus that I would let people know is that there are a few changes that I made. There are a lot of salaries that were in the utility budget that I really don't feel should be in there. I don't think it's transparent. We are beginning to move those back into the general budget where they belong. In addition, we will be paying off the Fletcher property 3 years sooner than anticipated. We increased the reduction of that bond payment by 50% over the next 3 years, which will pay off the Fletcher property once and for all. It should. We are under two things. Of course, the zero tax increase. We are under the appropriation cap. We are under the tax levy cap. We have also pretty much held the line on spending everywhere. There are some reductions, but not a tremendous amount. We are including $18,000 to lease 2 new police vehicles. We're looking to lease 2 new cars each year for the next 3 years, so that we turn over the police cars every 3 years. They will all be new. As you know, policemen, we put a lot of mileage on these cars, and it's starting to, the maintenance issues are getting a little cumbersome, because especially now, all these cars are built and they're run by computers. So it's not the same as it was, say, even 10 years ago as to what, the maintenance needs are. And it's a lot easier to get out of them than to keep fixing them. You will see, of course, in municipal space, as I said, the payment of bond principal instead of $40,000 will now be $62,000. Interest instead of $10,000 will now be $13,000, thereby paying off the Fletcher property in half the time as was anticipated. Instead of paying it off in 2023, we will pay it off in 2020. And those are my main points. I think you will see that pretty much we have taken care of everybody and everything, and we still anticipate a remaining surplus for this year. We are using some of the surplus we had from last year, of course, but we still anticipate a very nice surplus, and should actually be a little higher than what we're showing. And at that, I would turn it over to Jay, or if you have any additional comments you'd like to make on it.
Just a couple of highlights. Mr. Dibber has given the overview of the budget presentation. A couple of things, if I may, just to walk the council and the public. We have distributed copies of the 10-page budget summary. This is what we refer to as our worksheet. It includes all of the numbers that are included on the 50-plus page state form, but it's a little bit easier to follow. This is technically the budget document, which is, upon introduction, is on file, will be submitted to the state for review, and is available for review here in the municipal building for anyone that needs to. As Councilman Dibber indicated, on page 1 of the budget summary, at line 30, the tax rate is showing a zero, no change, with the tax rate remaining unchanged at 37.31 cents per $100 of assessed valuation. The next section of page 1 is a summary of our total assessments. As a result of the county's assessment demonstration program, all properties are reassessed on an ongoing basis, and you can see that our tax base has remained stable. Approximately 85% of our property base, our property valuation is in the form of residential properties. Just under 10% is commercial properties, and an additional 5% being apartment complexes. So certainly that has remained relatively unchanged over the last number of years. As a result of the reassessment that is done annually, the total tax base in the town has risen by some just over $27 million, and that translates for the average residential property. Last year, the average property for residential purposes was assessed at $476,000. Under the current 2017 assessments, they have increased the average to $486,000. That translates into approximately $1,800 in municipal purpose tax for the average residential property. And again, we realize that all property owners pay their taxes to the borough of Spring Lake Heights, but in fact, more than 70% of your tax is for your schools as well as the county. The balance is left here in town to support this budget, but the borough turns around and remits the county taxes and the school taxes to the school and the county immediately. In terms of, Councilman Dibber has also indicated that our surplus is at a healthy level. We continue to see a very strong tax collection rate in excess of some 98% of property owners pay their taxes on time. As a result, we are able to reduce the amount of our reserve for uncollected taxes, and that generates a stable tax rate here in Spring Lake Heights. Additionally, that collection rate allows us to have a healthy surplus. We currently have available some $750,000 of surplus. This budget anticipates using $450,000 of that surplus. providing us with a remaining balance of just over $300,000, and that compares very favorably last year at this time with the amount of surplus that was included in the 2016 budget. Our surplus balance was just under $300,000, so we're very stable there. Likewise, on the utility side, this budget is prepared utilizing $450,000 of surplus, providing a balance of just under $244,000. So the utility surplus is also in very good shape. A couple of general comments. Our revenues are generally stable. Unfortunately, we don't see any real increases in our non-tax revenues. For what is probably 10 years in a row, the amount of our state aid in the form of energy receipts tax will be flat at just under $400,000. As Councilman Differs also indicated, in the open space budget, the reduction of debt service related to the purchase of the Fletcher property in prior years, that was in the amount of $50,000. That has been stepped up to $75,000, providing for an accelerated pay down of the debt that was incurred in the purchase of the Fletcher property. On the appropriation side, again, I know the council has had some chance to review this. We will have an in-depth discussion if necessary at our next work session. Procedurally, the way the budget works is this introduction tonight allows us to move forward. The budget will be submitted to the state for review. A public hearing will be scheduled. It can be held no less than 28 days from tonight. So our public hearing is scheduled for April 24th, at which time we hope the state will have completed their review, and if there are any changes that the state requires as that review, we'll make those at that time.
If I can just make one comment?
Sure.
On the utility budget, as you know, a few years ago, we passed the ordinance that actually raised our utility rates here in town. Not only did it stabilize the budget, but as a result, we do have major expenditures coming up, one of them being the painting of the water tower, which is an extremely expensive job, and one that we will have the money for without having to borrow as a result of what we did with the utility fund. By not taking from the utility fund to the general fund, and by making sure that the utility fund had enough money, it is almost self-sustained. That's what you want in the utility.
That's all I have, but I don't know if there are any questions or if Mr. Barrett has anything to add.
I have nothing to answer.
I'm thrilled by the progress, and I know that we put a lot of time in 2 years ago, and last year there was a lot of effort looking for a longer-term goal and trying to establish looking at 5, 10, 20 years, and I feel like things are going the right way and having a fresh set of eyes come in, and I really appreciate the compliment because we put a lot of effort in and it wasn't an easy battle, and I appreciate Mr. Barrett for the effort you put in, and Mr. Delaney, there was a lot of effort that went into it, but I keep hearing the word surplus, and I know I see cringing because people think that's like extra money set there under the mattress that's just left there, and I really want people to understand that that's there for a reason. That's part of the longer-term plan. When you hear it, I like the term fund balance because that's really what it is. It's left over at the end of the year that can be applied for other things, but it's not surplus like left over, taking more money than we need and not using it. That's money that's there, so when we need it later, we're not going out and borrowing it and paying interest on it and struggling to find things. So I wanted to clarify the surplus stuff because I saw a couple facial reactions to the word and some of the numbers. I know it seems like a lot, but keep in mind what a garbage truck costs. And when he's talking about the utility, we have, I don't know how many miles of infrastructure in the ground that was put in, I don't know, we're getting close to 100 years ago, right?
Very close.
So 100-year-old pipes in the ground that we're dealing with that very little is done besides reactive, and we're trying to look ahead to say it's time to start proactively replacing pipe, it's time to proactively start replacing equipment in the borough so we don't end up in the spot where we were many years ago where we have to borrow a whole lot of money in one shot and overnight you're getting an increase. So the two parts that I see here that I really hope people walk away with is not only did we hold the line at zero, but there's also money left over to plan for the future, and that's the key part. It's easy to make it zero as politicians to make it look great on paper. It's another to make it zero and still have money left over. That's efficient, effective management, and I'm very proud to be a part of it.
The final comment I'd like to make is that.
No, keep going.
And you mentioned the capital. At the end of 2012, we had in total indebtedness in the amount of just over $3 million. Today, that is literally half, $1.5 million. One of the items that was reviewed closely, and I know last year we spent a lot of time talking about capital. The capital program that has been distributed to the council with this budget does anticipate incurring short-term debt in the current calendar year to accelerate some of our improvements, specifically public works equipment, as well as the planned milling and paving of Wall Road. I think for those of you that were here last year, Wall Road was not on our radar screen for repaving, but last year in August, as a result of gas company work, the gas company has come in and really taken what was a decent road and turned it into a mess. The gas company later this spring will be milling and paving half of that road to repair it, to restore it as a result of the gas line that was replaced. The borough has taken a look at it, and the plan is that we would, at the same time, or in conjunction with the gas company, do a milling and repaving of the balance of that. That was not included or anticipated last year. We do anticipate to do that this year, and to fund that, to incur short-term debt to finance that. And we'll have more discussion of that. The plan is that at our next meeting, we would be in a position to introduce a bond ordinance for that short-term indebtedness to cover those purchases.
As you're costing that to figure out budget numbers, I'd like to make sure we include at least 2 crossings similar to what we did on Ocean Road for Wall Road. I've gotten very positive feedback about the impact on Ocean Road and the residents there. I'd like to also continue that to Wall Road while we're doing the paving. It's a great time to get it done.
I'll actually remind the engineer, Joe May, Mr. Mayor, our engineer, we had actually planned on doing that last year, and then with the gas company,
Right.
it was deferred.
Absolutely.
So I'll make sure that we include the 2 crosswalks.
Thank you.
Should we touch now on this bond anticipation?
If you want to,
Might as well, because we're talking about it, we might as well.
sure.
Again, to compliment my predecessor, and everyone who served with him in passing last year's budget, Chris last year put in a structure that we would save for capital improvements in specific areas, mainly the police department, DPW, recreation, et cetera, places where we needed funds. We are maintaining that, and at the same time, given the fact that our, especially Department of Public Works, where we have a lot of very old equipment, some newer equipment was purchased that apparently didn't work out so well, and we're pretty much behind the curve on this. We need to get the DPW equipment ahead of the curve. Because, of course, now this year was not a terrible snow year, but we know what terrible snow years can do. And we need to have equipment that we can not only maintain, but that we need to essentially, what I'm saying is, we probably have all the equipment at DPW. There are 2 new trucks, but those 2 new trucks are now what, 7 or 8 years old?
5
8 years? Everything else is old, way old, and needs to be replaced. What Chris put in place last year would get us to a certain point, but what we noticed in doing inventory on those materials is it's not going to be fast enough. It's good for everything else, but it's not fast enough for DPW. And it's going to wind up costing us excess in terms of maintenance. They're constantly, especially there's a couple of trucks that are constantly transmission work, ball joints, brake, it's...
Yeah, those are the same manufacturer. We
Yeah,
bought
that
trucks and
manufacturer is just
manufacturer has it.
terrible.
Just so we can, just to interject with Rich, he and I had in-depth conversations, and I really appreciate the communication we had in transition on that to keep the vision of what we worked on. Basically, my plan and what I looked at assumed our baseline was 0. Assumed we were at a spot where you were carrying over year to year. We're not. We're behind on a lot of equipment, so the plan would have been great if everything was modern and current. Because we're so far behind, we need to take a little bit ahead so we can get in front of the wave instead of constantly trying to climb up it from behind.
If we get ahead of this, then what Chris put in place will work spectacularly, because we'll be able to stagger this out in terms of in the future. But right now, we need to purchase, let's see, in going over the inventory, there were, just give me a second. I went to Catholic school, just bear with me.
Can I get a roll or wrap you on the wrist?
Oh, okay. Okay. We need to purchase, really, a garbage truck. There's a couple of Mason dumpsters that need to be purchased. We need another scooter car. Essentially, what it comes down to is we would need there, if we're taking, and also putting into this the pavement of Wall Road, we would need approximately $575,000. We have the down payment of $30,000 already in the capital fund that Chris set up that we'll be using to make the down payment on this. But we need to do a bond anticipation note, which I think we can do, if I'm not incorrect. I heard Janet yelling a couple of weeks ago, so I would assume the interest rate would be 1.25%.
That's correct, yes, correct.
Correct?
It would only be a set at market, but
Right.
generally that's what we're running at. And that's 1-year paper,
Right.
which is the cheapest way to fund this, so we're not getting into bonding costs
Exactly.
and especially for the amount of money.
Right.
We'll roll it and then pay the price.
Because we're not talking about going out there and doing a huge bond ordinance. This is a simple, this is about, say, max 600,000 or so in that area. And that will cover us on the equipment, paving Wall Road, which must be done. Anybody that's driven down it lately knows it has to be done. And the public works equipment. The police, and also, to take into account also, if you look at our police vehicles, a lot of our police vehicles are older than 5 years old. They are costing us a tremendous amount of maintenance at this point. It's sort of silly in this day and age when we can essentially lease these vehicles. Now, you'll say, well, why not lease the DPW vehicles? It's a different animal altogether. Commercial truck is not an automobile. It's, the hyper automobile. But in terms of the cars, if we can keep the police force, say, and I know Sarah agrees with me on this, if we can turn over these cars in this police force on average every 3 years, we're going to reduce our maintenance costs, long term, very significant. And that's something we need to do. These cars are, the way they're outfitted and the way they're, manufactured today with computer systems and whatnot, we don't necessarily have the ability to fix these things. So we've got to send them out. And when you send them out, they've got to go back to either manufacturer or whoever like a Ford dealer or whoever it is, a Chevy dealer that has the diagnostic materials to fix these things. And that's what it is. We don't have a computer diagnostic machine here, and I can tell you they cost a fortune. Something that we really don't need to invest in. And I myself would rather see the police department have vehicles that are reliable, and that, will sustain 3 years of excess wear and tear, because they all get excess wear and tear. And we need, so that would be, to me, 3 years should be the life of any vehicle in the police department going forward. I think it's just a safe, sane thing to do.
So the 3-year leases that you looked into, have appropriate amounts of mileage for the price that you've quoted in the budget?
Yep.
So, because we'll probably put out, 30,000
They
miles a
assume that,
year.
that's, they know.
Which is not a typical lease, right?
No,
A
but
typical
they know
lease
you're
is
going-
12,000 miles a year.
It's
We're
not
gonna do
the
at least
volume
twice.
of miles, it's how hard the miles are. Is that
Well,
about
Yeah,
right?
but they're still, probably over 20,000 miles a year, right?
That's fair to say.
Yeah, which
It's
is
a dollar.
more than a typical lease, is
Yeah.
what I'm saying, yeah. Okay.
If you go to page 8 of 10, you will see that on police vehicles, we've appropriated $18,000 to lease 2 new cars this year. Those cars will probably be here for July 1, I assume, is anticipated, if not sooner, I hope. But in terms of where we were, in terms of our equipment, and where we need to be in terms of our equipment, this will get us there. And it will get us there more on an immediate basis. The police department would have an entire new set of cars within the next 3 years, meaning their oldest car would be 3 years old. They have 2 cars that are 2 years old and 2 cars that are 1 year old. That's the way it should be. You want to stagger that. And I'm trying to think. I think I covered that. Yes? Okay. Any people have a question for me?
I don't know if anybody has anything else to say, but I'm ready to make a motion to introduce.
No, it's my two questions were just how much have we borrowed, and you made that very clear, and then, make sure that we.
Stay there.
No, I think that, as you have said, Chris did a great job on the
He
budget
did.
last year. I think it was the accumulation of a lot of work and got us to a point that I think we're moving in the right direction. It sounds like if we just jumpstart the equipment in our public works that we knew, looking last year at the Capitol, when we went through our capital inventory, how many items showed up as red as being 10-plus years older, we knew we had a problem, so I'm glad we're willing to take care of it.
No, I mean, we had a lot of meetings. I mean, I met with Chris, I met with Jimmy, I met with Ron, I met with Sarah, we discussed all of these issues. And Joe, we discussed a few issues even tonight. It's, one of the things that I like about this budget is that it's proactive and not reactive. We're getting ahead of the curve, and that's what's really necessary.
Just procedurally, to comply with a couple of quirks in the law, we have listed the introduction, or technically it's considered an approval of the budget, although it's not an adoption, as part of the resolutions, number 59. Before that, we want to do the cap ordinance, cap bank ordinance, which is supposed to be done first.
And just to procedurally, as we have shown in the past, if there are needs to make changes to this budget, the introduction of this budget does not set this in stone. We certainly have shown that to be the case in previous years, so don't think that us introducing this prevents you from coming up and stating your piece, and that it won't make any difference. We'll listen, and there are changes that can be made.
I'd like to make a motion to introduce ordinance number 2017-01, an ordinance to exceed the municipal appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank for 2017 pursuant to NJSA 40A:4-45, spot 14.
I'll second that.
Roll call?
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. American?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tompi?
Yes.
Motion passes.
I'd like to make a motion to introduce ordinance number 2017-02. Oh,
Kind of jumped ahead there.
that's not me.
That's okay.
Oh, really?
I'll get back to the announcement.
An ordinance amending chapter, I thought it was this, I'm looking, Catholic school. An ordinance amending chapter
I'm getting offended by
22
that.
Municipal Land Use Regulations, section 22-606.5-B3, commercial zone, business and retail.
I'll second it.
Hey, maybe just for a second, you want to explain
Yeah.
what's going on with this one?
Sure. I mean, this one, I was at the planning board meeting. There were some, it's for some minor changes to the P3 zone, basically bringing the ordinance in line with sort of the original intent. So the way that it's written right now, it indicates that the total area can only have 50% office space. And we want to make it on a building-by-building basis, so it's basically that change. That was the original intent, to make it building-by-building. That's not how it's written at the current time, so we want to make that change. So that's what that second ordinance is about, that Rich has just introduced.
I just kept reading.
I do have a question. When we were discussing, or I guess the planning board was discussing the issue over there of a cafe going in, there was a outside dining issue. Since we have this and we want to make this minor change, could we also make a change to B3 that there be no outdoor dining going forward?
I don't think that this is the appropriate place. I mean, this is basically just changing some minor language as opposed to making an actual,
This is more in the form, as I
Yeah.
understood it, of fixing a typograph or whatever.
yes.
Okay.
And then, so I think that would probably want to confer with the board before you jump to do something like that.
Okay.
So we didn't get a roll call on that one, right?
No, I did not. Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. American?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tompi?
Yes.
So both of those ordinances will have to be published, and we'll have a public hearing at our next meeting, April 10th.
Okay, so going backwards on the agenda, we finished, I guess, our discussion. Does anybody, last chance to have a say right now? We are going to go into a work session on the budget the next time we talk about it, but, okay, so I'll go through the reports, notices, and mayor and council reports, actually, let's do that. Start with Councilman Thompson.
No report?
Councilman
Nothing.
Councilwoman King.
I have two things that I just want to make mention of. We have had an incident occur here in town where a 21-year-old resident suffered a heart-related issue, and he actually coded. Sergeant Gallo and Sergeant Ventimiglia were the first ones on the scene, and through their immediate response, this young man was brought back, was transported to the hospital, and I understand is now in a hospital in New York making progress, but obviously would not be here today if it wasn't for the tremendous quickness and expertise of our two sergeants. The same young man a couple of years ago suffered the heart-related issue and coded at that time, and our officer Casey Williams and officer Ray Kukowski responded then. The young man is going through some very difficult things, but he has done well, but now had a setback. So we want to keep Ethan Lambert and his family in our prayers. Also, Sergeant Gannell was having dinner with his family in Harrigan's down in Seagirt, and a woman at a table next to him and his family, who was out with her family, was choking, and for all intents and purposes, without the quick response of Sergeant Gannell, would probably not be here today also. And we received a very nice thank you letter from the woman. The chief has given a lot of details on both of these incidences to our reporter, Matt. And what I just said here tonight is all the chief wanted me to go into at this time. But Sergeant Gannell is standing in the back of the room, and I think we should give him a round of applause. He's very modest, and he did not want any fanfare, but
So no speech.
Didn't even want, Zach forced me to come in.
This is very, very heartwarming, Ed, and
He is home, the first victim is home, came home 2 nights ago.
okay, good, good.
A nice little addition.
Thank you. I appreciate your
Thank you.
addition. Thank you, and thank you for all your efforts and
It was
Sergeant.
timing, it was timing. I
Yes.
just wanted a sizzling steak sandwich from Harrigan. Wasn't anticipating.
Well, we can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
Councilwoman King, the first issue was Travis, and who was the other?
Travis and Ed Gannell, Sergeant Gannell and Sergeant Ventimiglia. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilman Schuler?
I have nothing to report. I would like to thank Councilman Dittler for getting us equipment. The Public Works equipment is old and getting pretty much run down, so thank you.
They love you for it.
I have a whole bunch of other things. I think at this point, I'd like to make a motion to introduce, I guess it would be an ordinance for the bond anticipation note, correct? 'Cause we have it here. Say that again?
Have the ordinance due for the next meeting.
Oh, the next meeting? Fine.
You like jumping ahead.
I
like the energy, Rich.
Yes, now he's all the way into the next meeting, so you didn't get to the rest.
Move this along.
We can adopt the budget too.
We can adopt it right now.
All right. So let me go through the reports, notices, and correspondences. So we have the annual tax collector's report for 2016, the monthly police report we received for February 2017. We received a Borough of Red Bank Resolution 17-55, supporting the filing of a complaint that the Criminal Justice Reform Act constitutes an unfunded state mandate. We also have a very similar resolution from the Township of Colts Neck, and then we have a letter from the New Jersey DEP regarding dam restoration and inland waters project loan program. We've already done the ordinance introductions.
I'll make the motion for the resolution for the budget.
That brings us to our first resolution, which is our resolution R 2017-59, approving the 2017 municipal budget.
I'll second.
Should
We
we
have a motion.
So we have a first and a second.
Should we correct that to be introducing as opposed to approving? Just
The technical word for the state is.
okay. So we're approving the introduction. Got it. I don't want people to think we're approving the budget and it's over without feedback from residents. That's not fair. We would never do that.
We need a lawyer.
Just listen to Jeff. You're fine.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Can we get a roll call then?
Mr. Campion.
Yes.
Mr. Diver.
Absolutely.
Mrs. King.
Yes.
Mr. American.
Okay, yes.
Mr. Schuler.
Yes.
Mr. Tompi.
Abstain.
I'm very proud to say I think this is 3 years in a row that we made the schedule ahead of time when we were supposed to start the clock, right?
All right, that brings us to resolution R 2017-60, authorizing a contract with Cleary, Jacoby, Alfieri, Jacobs for the tax appeal and legal services.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Mr. Campion.
Yes.
Mr. Diver.
Yes.
Mrs. King.
Yes.
Mr. American.
Yes.
Mr. Schuler.
Yes.
Mr. Tompi.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Next resolution is resolution number R 2017-61, a resolution of the Borough Council authorizing additional temporary budget appropriations pending the adoption of the 2017 municipal budget.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Mr. Campion.
Yes.
Mr. Diver.
Yes.
Mrs. King.
Yes.
Mr. American.
Yes.
Mr. Schuler.
Yes.
Mr. Tompi.
Abstain.
Next resolution, resolution number, you didn't say actually, resolution
Okay.
passes. Right?
Yes, we're good.
Resolution number R 2017-62, a resolution of the Borough Council authorizing the joint purchasing agreement with the Borough of Neptune City for police department equipment for training purposes.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Mr. Campion.
Yes.
Mr. Diver.
Yes.
Mrs. King.
Yes.
Mr. American.
Yes.
Mr. Schuler.
Yes.
Mr. Tompi.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Resolution of the Borough Council, next one, sorry, R 2017-63, a resolution of the Borough Council supporting the 2017 You Drive, You Text, You Pay distracted driving crackdown from April 1st through April 21st, 2017.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Mr. Campion.
Yes.
Mr. Diver.
Yes.
Mrs. King.
Yes.
Mr. American.
Yes.
Mr. Schuler.
Yes.
Mr. Tompi.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Resolution number R 2017-64, a resolution of the Borough Council authorizing a tax lien redemption payment.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Mr. Campion.
Yes.
Mr. Diver.
Yes.
Mrs. King.
Yes.
Mr. American.
Yes.
Mr. Schuler.
Yes.
Mr. Tompi.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Next resolution is resolution 2017-65, a resolution of the Borough Council authorizing release of the designated maintenance guarantee and escrow deposit.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Mr. Campion.
Yes.
Mr. Diver.
Yes.
Mrs. King.
Yes.
Mr. American.
Yes.
Mr. Schuler.
Yes.
Mr. Tompi.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Resolution number R 2017-66 is also a resolution of the Borough Council authorizing the release of the designated maintenance guarantee and escrow deposit for a different party.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. American?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tompier?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Next, resolution number R 2017-67, a resolution of the Borough Council approving use of the Ocean Road Park tennis courts for the Spring Lake Heights school team. And the dates are listed in the ordinance.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. American?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tompier?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Next, we have resolution R 2017-68, a resolution of the Borough Council approving use of the community center by the Waterford Spring Lake Heights Condominium Association.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. American?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tompier?
Yes.
Motion passes.
And then we have resolution 2017-69, a resolution of the Borough Council approving payment of the itemized claims as set forth on the March 24th, 2017 bill list.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Mr. Campion?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. American?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tompier? Motion passes.
That brings us through all of our resolutions. I think we got through everything, if not in the exact right order, to our public comment section. This public comment section is for comment on any item on the agenda or off the agenda. If you'd like to speak, please approach the chair, state your name and address, and state your piece.
Ann Kirkland, 564 Atlantic Avenue. In 2008, the council and the Environmental Commission agreed to do a joint project, which was called the Municipal Energy Audit. And even though everybody said they were on board with it, it got pushed off, it got postponed, and eventually it got derailed. And then when Mr. Campion came aboard 2 years ago, he very graciously restarted the process, worked to get the paperwork filled out, and pushed it forward. And I understand his frustration that things didn't go smoothly. Does anybody know the status of that, where that is?
You heard anything from Joe? The last I heard from Joe, he had gotten a response and he was waiting for some kind of meeting. I guess they were going to send paperwork back to him and approve it or ask for additional info. That was the last I heard. It was in the review phase. That was about a month ago.
Yeah, my understanding is the same, and I don't know what the current status is. I know there was some question as to whether our electric or utility usage actually met the minimum threshold for participation, so they did go back and forth and try to consolidate.
Okay.
Can we have an actual update for the next meeting, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, because in the 9 years that the town's been trying to move this forward, Spring Lake has done theirs, Brielle has done theirs, Wall has done theirs, Belmar, almost every town around us has done theirs. And now the Clean Energy Program, the funding for that probably is going to get cut. So that was potential free money for the borough that we could have been getting grants through Sustainable Jersey if that had been done. So I think it would really behoove us to try
we
to
out of
push that
time?
forward. Huh?
Are we out of time yet?
No,
Okay.
we could still do it. So I really think that that would be good if we could get that done.
I'd be curious to see what the update is next week or next meeting, because when you make a comment about whether or not we make the minimum usage, I remember when I investigated this and I was told that none of that applied. And it seems time and again, I'm hearing extraneous excuses why it's stalled or not going forward, and I'm exhausted by them.
Yeah, because in this time, we could have put solar panels on the roof of DPW buildings and probably running the whole town off alternative energy. And I know all you folks up there, and I know the majority of you are interested in saving money, getting free money, and most of you are interested in sustainability. So I would think that this would be a big piece that everybody would want to.
Whose lap is that in?
Joe's.
Joe.
The significant part of that for me was the doors that opened for funding that we could have access to once we've gone through the program and had it audited. That opens doors to us of different grants and funding resources that without that process we don't have, which is why all the towns around us have done it, and for some reason we're spinning wheels.
Bingo. All right, so next meeting?
But I think next meeting, and I think if there is an issue, then I think we need to go to one of the towns next to us who have somehow managed to start and finish it in a small fraction of the time that it's taken us to find out what we're doing wrong.
Spring Lakes is online, it's beautiful. I'll send you a
Everybody's
copy
is,
of it.
I had copies of it.
Yeah.
But when we looked at the program, and you mentioned this to me when I first got on, I went on and did research on it, and I was amazed by the information.
Yeah, so, thank you.
Thank you.
John Benjamin, 564 Atlantic Avenue. The assessment development program, we talked about that here several meetings ago, and an RFP was going to be prepared, looking for another vendor. So what's the status on that? Has that gone out? And if so, has the other vendor, anybody responded?
You.
Actually, the RFP has been completed. It's gone through the review by the assessor, by the attorney. In fact, I attended a session on Thursday night at the county. I think one of the questions that was raised was the other firms that are out there. I have a meeting scheduled with Mr. Moore from the tax board to gather that information. So we expect within the next few days that RFP will be on the street.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands, can I get a motion to?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Campion,
Yes.
Mr. Diver,
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. King.
Moving right
I was
along.
typing and then you couldn't type and talk at the same time.
Starting
Mr.
something,
Merricks,
Yes.
Mr. Schuler,
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Motion passed.
That brings us to the end of our agenda. Can I get a motion to close? the meeting? All in favor?
We had a budget introduction meeting that took 40